Hey, this is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you how to install the Tusk UTV Rear Bumper, cargo rack, and spare tire carrier on this Can-Am X3. All right, this kit we're installing today is a 3-piece system, and you can buy each piece individually or in the kit. Now, if you're buying each piece individually and you want to get that spare tire carrier on there, keep in mind that you have to have that rear bumper and cargo rack already installed or it won't work. Now, if you're not already familiar with this system, it's going to give you some extra space for luggage, but you're also going to have that spare tire when you need it. The bumper is going to give you added protection, and it has a tow hook to help your buddies out when they need it. Now, this thing not only looks tough, but it's really easy to install, and it fits most Maverick X3s except for the XMR, and that's because they have a snorkel coming up out of the top and the cargo rack won't fit on there. But if you have that model, you can still run that rear bumper. Now, we're going to show you how to do this on a 2019 X3 Max XRS. The first thing we'll do is inspect our parts, read through our provided set of instructions, and check that we have all the necessary hardware for the installation. To do this job, we have some common hand tools, including some Allen bits. We've got rags, safety glasses. You'll also need a jack that can raise and secure the rear of the machine. To get this kit installed, we're going to start with the rear bumper. We'll then move up to the cargo rack, and last, we'll install the spare tire carrier. Now, if you're only installing one of these items, then you can go ahead and skip to that part of the video. But to get this rear bumper installed, we need to remove the support plate. To do that, we're going to raise the rear of the machine. And since this machine has long travel suspension, we've got a couple wooden blocks on our jack. So we're going to go ahead and lift it up, and that's going to make removing this plate a little bit easier. When jacking this up, you only need to raise it high enough to unload the suspension. You don't need the tires to come off the ground. Next, I'll use my 18mm socket to remove the 6 bolts holding down the support plate, and we'll remove it. If your support plate gets stuck, you might have to move your tires around a little bit to get the control arms to release the plate. Now we're ready to get this bumper installed. Keep in mind it does replace that support plate. And when you install it, it's going to be helpful to have a couple of friends that hold the bumper in place and move these wheels, because what we'll do, we'll start with these bottom 2 studs. We'll loosely install those bolts, and then it might take a little bit of work to get the rest of the studs lined up, and then you'll loosely install the nuts on those. The next thing we'll do is install our provided hardware into these upper bumper supports. Now, this hardware, we've got 2 9/16 inch by 3 inch bolts, and we'll put the flat washer on first. Then we'll install this spacer in between the bracket on this frame, and then we'll align the bumper up with these holes. Now, to do that, it might take a little bit of finesse. You might just have to push on the bumper, or you may have to raise or lower the machine to get this to line up. Once you get the bolt installed and everything's lined up, we can then install the flange nut, and we're just going to install it loosely for now. Now we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. With all the nuts and bolts loosely installed, we'll go ahead and check for proper fitment and make sure we have optimal fit. Then we'll tighten everything down. With all the bolts tightened up, we can now lower our jack, and that completes the rear bumper install. We can now move on to installing our cargo rack. All right, the first step to install our cargo rack, if you have these rear shock canisters, you'll want to rotate them in 90 degrees. Some machines might not have that, but if you do, you'll just loosen this clamp and rotate it. Now we'll do this to both sides, and you'll leave the bolts loose on the clamps after you turn them 90 degrees. The next step is to remove the 2 bolts in the corners of the rear section of the roof. You don't have to remove the roof to get this cargo rack installed. The next step is to remove the back of these 3 clamps from these support bars, and that way we can dry fit this thing onto our machine. Now, to make this easier, I'm actually gonna remove this cargo rack. You don't have to do this, but it's just gonna make it easier to get to the back side of these Allen bolts. It's also gonna make the installation of our spare tire carrier easier. At this point, we can now dry fit the support bars for our cargo rack onto the machine. Now, when we do that, you can make any adjustments to these shock canisters, move them where you need them, and then we'll install the backside of the clamps. Now, while we're installing these bolts, I'm just using a ball Allen. This is making the job a lot easier. All right, at this point, if you're not gonna run the spare tire carrier, you would go ahead and tighten your 3 clamps up. When you tighten those down, you wanna make sure the gaps on both sides stay even, and then you can tighten down these shock canisters. After that, you'll take the cargo rack, you'll reinstall your 8 bolts and tighten them down, and then you've got these plates on the back. So these plates, you've just got a couple bolts that came in the kit, bolt those up, and then you're done. But for us, since we are running the spare tire carrier, we're gonna go ahead and get that ready to install. Just like the cargo rack, to get the spare tire carrier ready, we need to remove the back of these 2 clamps, and we'll just remove all 12 bolts. Now we can take our spare tire carrier and set it into place. We'll install the backside of the clamps onto the bumper and loosely install those bolts, and then we'll slide the top down into place, line up the bolt holes, and install the M10 by 16 millimeter bolts. All right, now with everything loosely installed, we need to take side-to-side measurements and get the spare tire carrier centered on our bumper. To do that, I'm just gonna measure from one of these brackets to the edge. So we are 5 9/16. And this other side, we're at 6 inches. So we'll get that slid over. You can keep making adjustments until you have an equal measurement on both sides of your bumper. And then we'll go ahead, we'll tighten both of these clamps down, and we'll go throughout the machine and tighten down all of our mounting hardware. Now that we have all of our hardware tightened down, we can go ahead and flip our mounting bracket for the spare tire. This comes shipped upside down. Now, something I like about the spare tire carrier is it's fully adjustable for different offset wheels. So you can move it all the way out or all the way in, depending what size of wheel you have, and you want your wheel as close as you can to this backbone. Now we can go ahead and tighten all 6 mounting bolts down. The next step is to make the final adjustments to your shock canisters, and then we'll tighten down the clamp bolts. The next step is to reinstall the cargo rack. We'll tighten down all 8 bolts, and then we'll install the 2 bolts into the roof. And that's all there is to installing the Tusk UTV rear bumper, cargo rack, and spare tire carrier. This is really the ultimate setup on these X3s, and if you need these parts, they're available on our website. So be sure to check that out. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have a ton of other helpful videos on there. Thanks for watching.